So if I can introduce our next speaker. So Jérôme actually resides in Langkawi, and he's a publisher, a translator, and a writer, and he's the founder of Editions Jentayu, a publishing house dedicated to the translation of Asian literature into French language. Perhaps later, Jérôme, you can share with me the meaning of Jentayu with us, with all of us, yeah, and where the word came from. And together with Georges Voisset, he co-edited the Une Poignée de Pierreries. I'm not sure whether I pronounced that correctly. A collection of gems, is that? A handful of gems, yeah. The first collection of French Pantun ever published. And on that note, to welcome Jérôme, limau kasturi dari Batawi, tidak berduri berpohon rendang. Dari Eropah menetap di Langkawi. Terima kasih Tuan Jérôme, sudi bertandang. Silakan.
I'll use this. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here. Just to answer your question just now, you were saying where does Jentayu come from? It's actually the name of this mythical bird that was part of the Ramayana epic. And it's an epic that actually has traveled around a lot of countries in Asia and has settled in a few. There are a few versions in Thailand, in Indonesia, etc., etc. And Jentayu is actually the Malay version of the name Jatayu. Jatayu is the original name from the Ramayana, and the Malays have actually adapted that name to Jentayu. And Jentayu is supposed to be residing somewhere on the island of Lanka. And because in the Malay culture, they thought that maybe Lanka is Langkawi. So Jentayu actually is a bird that resides somewhere in Langkawi. And so because I am myself based in Langkawi, I've decided to call my publishing house Editions Jentayu. Here you go. And the bird is, of course, a nice symbol of traveling without having to bother about borders. Thank you. Yes. So I will start my talk on Pantoun as a celebration of friendship. So you might know that in the Hikayat Hang Tuah, there is this one famous scene in which all the 5 so-called brothers, Lima Bersadara, so there's, of course, Hang Tuah, Hang Jebat, Hang Kasturi, Hang Lekir, Hang Lekyu. All of them, they gather to bathe in a forbidden fountain and to pick fruits and flowers to rejoice with. In that scene, in their merriness, they start to banter and each of them actually start composing one pantun for the others. That scene is actually the only scene throughout the Hikayat in which Pantun appears so prominently. It is used in the form called Berbalas Pantun, and at that moment it comes as an unexpected poetic break from in the otherwise swashbuckling narrative, and of the first part of the Hikayat, and it serves as a form of dynamic dialogue to emphasize our 5 heroes' youthful and feisty temper, but it also symbolizes their loyalty to their lord and unity in fighting in his name. There is a certain sense of rogue friendship that transpires in this exchange of Pantun. It is a friendship, though, that we all know will eventually be betrayed for maybe loftier ideals. So when I think of our group of early Pantouneurs, I sometimes imagine ourselves as the 5 heroes. And if you can click on the next slide, yeah. So George is clearly the Laksamana, yes, Hang Tuah, the great Tun Tuah among us. While Renuga, Serge, Jean-Claude, who is not here today, and myself, Well, we share the four other roles in this posse of feisty poets. But perhaps a more fitting and less tragic name for our group would be something that George already mentioned, the Musketeers. So yeah, the Musketeers. And it's probably more fitting and more in line with our shared French culture. But then the Musketeers are only three, yes? And D'Artagnan is the Laksamana and in the gang, but it doesn't entirely do justice to the full group of us who embarked on this adventure of reviving the Pantoun form with French-speaking readers. But you see, it's kind of the same, huh? Yeah, the Jangut, almost some... only one, maybe that one is me, less Jangut. But, so yeah, I say reviving the the form of Pantoun with French-speaking readers, because as we saw, Pantoun had already been brought to French readers 2 centuries ago, or even earlier, as George mentioned. But at that time, the form just didn't stick. Worse, it went on to be twisted and to be transformed to the point of losing its original substance. Our mission was therefore clear. We had to make use of the World Wide Web to share the original rules of Pantoun with the Francophone public so that they could in turn write the authentic Pantoun in French. So I first met George in 2012. At that time, you had just been working on your Sankantil book, and you were giving book talks in KL to promote your work. I had been living in Malaysia for 4 years, and I was toying with the idea of maybe launching an online literary review dedicated to books from and about Malaysia, something that actually turned up to become Lettres de Malaisie. So you came to visit me in Langkawi and you encouraged me to carry my project through, which I did. You also suggested we use the platform to give readers a taste of Pantoun and to invite them to try and invite them to write some Pantoun themselves. So for all this, I am very grateful, eternally grateful, George. Thank you very much. So here's a little Pantoun I wrote for you. So, okay, yeah. Switch. That's Langkawi. Okay, now Pula Langkawi. So this is actually the first 2 lines of the Sembayang are actually from an original traditional Pantoun, and I changed the second part. Pula Langkawi pantainya indah, gunung raya tinggi menjulang, puas menanti bertemu sudah, bagai bertaut bunga kiambang. Isles of Langkawi with beautiful shores, Mount Raya towering up high. Content now that we have met, like 2 shelf flowers side by side. So the translation, the Pambayang was actually translated by Renuka a while ago. And I had the help of Brigitte to help me with the Maksud. Kakleha, Brigitte, who couldn't be here today, but... So then the second person I wanted to give thanks to is Serge. At about the same time, I had been in touch by email with Serge Jardin, whose curated list of books from and about Malaysia available in French I happened to find online. That list was to become a major feature of the literary journal, Lettres de Malaisie. It serves as its main backbone, its main structure, with reference pages for each of the books you had carefully listed over the years. Not only was the website giving insights on contemporary literature in Malaysia, but thanks to you, it also served as an archive for what had already been published over the past decades. So for all this, thank you very much, Serge. I am eternally grateful. And here's a little Pantoun I wrote for you. So again, using a traditional Malay Pantoun as a Pambayang, and then I changed maksud. Sudah roboh kota Melaka pada cerita terus terbayang. Pantun Perancis khazanah kita, Nusantara ke Paris sudah berkembang. And again, I have to thank Brigitte Kakleha here to help me with the second part. Now, from there, it was only natural that the three of us would meet soon after in KL. It was at the Alternative Book Fest held in Central Market in June 2012. And Pantoun was one of our many topics of conversation that day, and it all materialized with the very first issue of the Pantoun Review, which you saw earlier in one of the presentations. And so it was published online in September that same year, 2012. It contained mostly contributions by George, Serge, myself, Jean-Claude. So that guy with the spectacles that you saw earlier in the previous slide. Jean-Claude, so he's a long-distance pen friend of ours who is based in Luxembourg, sorry. And Renuga, you were to wait for the second issue of the Pantoun Review to actually contribute. But we all know, that as the one person who had to endure George's eccentric love for Pantoun for so many years, and as George's muse, you are an essential part of the founding crew of our Pantoun adventure. So for all this, we are all eternally grateful. And here is a little Pantoun that I wrote for Renuga, using again pembayang. Banyak orang bergelang tangan, saya seorang bergelang kaki. Banyak orang berpantun bosan, kumpulan kita berpantun ciki. So the rest is history, as they say. Over the past 12 years, each of us went on to write many, many pantuns, though not as many as George did. 33 issues of the Pantoun Review, as you said, have been published, and hundreds of French poets, young and old, have been instructed in the art of Pantoun. We held workshops, and we even turned ourselves into book publishers, Lemongrass, Cavolu, Jentayu, in order to spread the word about Pantoun. Together with a small but tight group of Pantoun lovers, George also goes on to organize events around France in various locations, from Henri Fauconnier's birthplace in Barbezieux to Lyon, from Brittany to Bordeaux, all this in the name of Pantoun. Our little Pantoun, as we call it, notre petit Pantoun. But just as importantly, all this as a way to cultivate our friendship. What started out 12 years ago not only opened my eyes. I think it's okay. Yeah. What started out 12 years ago not only opened my eyes on a fascinating aspect of Nusantara culture, this universe in a grain of sand, shared among a variety of peoples, but it also brought me true friends. Each of them very different from I, each of them way more learned than I, friends whom I'm indebted to for taking me along this illuminating ride. George, Renuga, Serge, but also Jean-Claude, but also Prof. Muhammad Haji Saleh, who couldn't be here today, but also Kakleha, Patricia, Mavoie, Kistila, Cédric, all these are French people who took part in our review so far, and I want to thank them here. I can't name them all, but if I were to summarize my feelings of gratitude in just 3 traditional Pantoun, here are the 3 ones that would obviously come to mind. Yeah. Buat cempedak di luar pagar, ambil galah, tolong colokkan, saya budak baru belajar, kalau salah, tolong tunjukkan. Next. Minta daun diberi daun, dalam daun buah bidara. Minta pantun diberi pantun, dalam pantun ada bicara. The last one. Isang emas bawa belaya masa sebiji di atas peti. Hutang emas dapat dibayar, hutang budi di bawah mati. Now, to go back to our hikayat Hang Tuah. To go back where we started, to that passage in the first part of the hikayat, in which these 5 Pantun can be found. I'll try my hand at fixing one of them. As I mentioned, all 5 Pantun are a call to unity in the face of enmity, a pledge of loyalty to the Lord before anything else. But this here is the one composed by Hang Tuah, the Laksamana himself. Lokkan melata di perahu, bela-baling bertanduan, bukanlah aku tiada tahu, akulah ulu balang minta lawan. What if, instead of always focusing on finding new enemies to fight with, our feisty Hang Tuah and his so-called brothers had chosen to compose Pantoun on true friendship? What if, instead of always being cocky and proud and looking for trouble, they had chosen to let down their guard once and to sincerely open their heart to each other? Could the fate meted out by Hang Jebat have been different then? Could Hang Tuah have understood his closest friend unwavering loyalty to him and to justice? So these are questions which, in a way, find their answers in the second part of the hikayat. In that second part, Hang Tuah is a different man. He's no more a warrior, he's now a traveler, an emissary of Malacca to foreign lands, someone with a more mature, a more open and diplomatic mind. No more charigado. The Laksamana is a free spirit, at home anywhere, holding the universe in his hand, just like a Pantoun is but a grain of sand holding a universe within it. So if we were to revise and fix Hang Tuah's Pantoun, maybe we could change it in this manner. Lokkan melata di perahu bela-baling bertanduan, memang aku tiada tahu, akulah musafir mencari kawan. Wouldn't that be better? Yeah? I think so. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Jérôme.